Today we will explore tales of apparitions at the witching hour. When the clock strikes that time where the barrier between worlds becomes thinner, apparitions appear in terrifying ways.
Around the same time.
At first, it was just a shadow in the darkness, but every night, at 3:33, that figure became sharper, more real, more terrifying. It all started when I moved into a new apartment 3 months ago. A cozy, simple place in a quiet area. Or at least, that's what I thought. During the first few nights, it took me some time to get used to the space, the street noises, and the feeling of being in a new place. But nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Until I started waking up at the same time every night, 3:33. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, caused by the stress of moving. The first time I woke up at that hour, I didn't pay much attention to it. I lay there, staring at the ceiling for a few minutes, feeling a bit uneasy, though I couldn't quite figure out why. I tried to go back to sleep, but the air felt heavy, as if something was in the room with me. Still, I didn't see anything strange. This happened for several nights, and even though it seemed odd, I decided to ignore it. One night, when I woke up, I had a different feeling, like someone was watching me. This time, I dared to sit up in bed and look around, but there was no one there. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was just my imagination. A week later, everything changed. That early morning, I woke up at the same time as always, and when I turned over in bed, I saw it. Standing by the door in a dark corner was a tall and slender figure. Its limbs were unnaturally long, stretched to their limit, and it stood completely still. I couldn't make out its face. I only saw a dark shadow with a blurry outline, but it was clear enough to know there was something, or someone, there. I was paralyzed, unable to look away. I couldn't scream, I couldn't move. I could feel its gaze on me, a gaze I couldn't see, but it pierced through me like a knife. I squeezed my eyes shut, telling myself it was just a dream, and when I opened them again, the figure was gone. I spent the rest of the night wide awake, trembling. For days, I couldn't sleep properly, my heart racing as the early hours of the morning approached. I didn't want to go into my bedroom. I spent most of my time in the living room, reading or watching TV until late. During the day, I tried to convince myself it was just nightmares or a figment of my imagination, distracting myself with work to avoid thinking about it. At night, I tried not to look at the clock, praying that hour wouldn't come, but inevitably, whenever I woke up, it always read 3:33. One night, I stayed up late watching a movie in the living room. However, sleep got the better of me, and when I opened my eyes, I could clearly feel someone watching me. My heart began pounding in my chest. I slowly sat up on the couch, avoiding any sudden movements. I turned my head toward the corner of the living room, hoping not to see anything. But it was there. The figure, clearer this time. It seemed closer, with its arms almost touching the floor. Its skin looked twisted, and I could make out hollow sockets where eyes should have been. This time, the figure began to move slowly, advancing toward me in an unnatural way, as if it were dragging itself. Despite my fear, with my hands trembling, I got up and ran down the hallway, feeling as though I was being chased. I locked myself in the bathroom, crying and praying for it to go away. I didn't come out until daylight. The next day, I knew I couldn't stay in that apartment. I packed the essentials and decided to go to a friend's house. I told her a softened version of what had happened, trying not to sound crazy, but I didn't tell her everything. I didn't mention the hollow eyes or how that thing seemed to get closer each time. I never slept in that place again. I didn't even dare go in during the day to collect the rest of my things. I hired someone to do it for me. But even so, since I left, Some nights I still wake up at 3:33 with the feeling that the dark figure is standing in some corner of whatever room I'm in. And sometimes, in the middle of the darkness, I feel it watching me.
Laughter and tears.
I thought ghosts couldn't hurt me until I saw that child with his pale skin staring at me from the corner. For some time now, I've worked as a night janitor in an old building, one of those places with a long and probably dark history. Most nights, I just clean empty hallways and turn off lights that, for some reason, keep turning back on by themselves. But one night, everything changed. It was around 3 in the morning when I heard it for the first time, crying. It was soft, like that of a small child, and it echoed down the main hallway of the building. I thought maybe someone had gotten trapped or snuck in, so I grabbed my flashlight and headed towards the sound. But as I got closer, the crying morphed into strange laughter, a child's laughter, distorted and eerie, bouncing off the walls. I stopped, trying to figure out where it was coming from, but it seemed like the echo came from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. After that night, the laughter and crying began to repeat, always at 3:33 in the morning. No matter where I was in the building, I would hear those sounds and feel as if someone was watching me. I couldn't explain what was happening, but the worst part came a week later, when I saw the child for the first time. It was the same hour as always, and I was finishing up cleaning the stairs to the basement. I was nervous, thinking that any moment I would hear that crying again. Suddenly, the lights started flickering, and in the dim light, I saw him. A small boy standing at the foot of the stairs. His skin was pale and damp, as if he had just emerged from an icy river. His clothes, which seemed from another time, were torn and dirty. But the worst were his eyes, empty, completely black. He stared at me with a smile that wasn't a normal child's smile. It was a grin of pure malice, something no human could reproduce. I didn't move. I was frozen, just staring at him. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, he was gone. But the cold I felt upon seeing him stayed with me for hours. That night, I remained in the lobby until my shift ended. When it did, I ran out of the building and didn't stop until I reached home. I tried to tell someone about what I saw, but most people just laughed. The few who believed me only said, "That building has always had strange stories." The next time I saw him, it was worse. A week had passed without anything strange happening, and I had convinced myself that what I saw was just my mind playing tricks on me. But that night, again at 3:33, I was on the upper floor, cleaning one of the old meeting rooms. The laughter filled the room again, but this time it was louder, as if it came from inside the room itself. I felt a chill run down my spine, and when I turned around, there was the boy, standing in front of one of the windows. This time I saw him more clearly. His skin seemed to glow in the moonlight filtering through the window, and there were dark stains on his hands, like they were covered in mud. His eyes, those black voids, stared at me, and in a split second, he ran towards me. His laughter turned into a high-pitched, piercing scream. I didn't have time to react. I just covered my face with my arms and screamed. But nothing touched me. When I dared to look again, the boy was gone. The window was still open and the wind was rustling the curtains, but there was no trace of him. I ran out of the room in a panic, sprinting through the hallways until I reached the lobby, where I stayed, waiting for dawn, not even thinking of moving again. I'm still working in the building, and every night when the clock strikes 3:33, it doesn't matter where I am, I feel like something is watching me. Sometimes, I still hear the laughter, like it's mocking me. And though I try to ignore it, I know that at any moment I will see him again, running toward me with that scream on his face and those black eyes that seem to devour the soul.
the 7 chimes.
I thought I was alone in the inn until I heard the bell in the middle of the night, and when I stepped into the hallway, my eyes met that figure in the shadows. I went on vacation to a small town with the idea of finding some peace. It was the typical quiet place, with cobblestone streets and wooden houses, surrounded by nature. The inn where I stayed was old but cozy, and the owner assured me that the nights were always very quiet. But the first night, that wasn't the case. I woke up startled at 3:33 a.m. to the loud sound of a bell. At first, I thought it might be part of a local tradition or that someone was playing a prank. But what was strange was that after ringing about 7 times, everything fell into a silence so thick that the air felt heavy, as if the world had stopped. I closed my eyes and tried to go back to sleep, but I felt like something wasn't right. Like something or someone was lurking in the darkness. The second night was much worse. Again, I woke up to the sound of the bell, 7 times once more, but now it felt slower and more distant. I got out of bed, uneasy, and went to the window, but outside there was nothing but darkness. That's when I heard something in the hallway of the inn. The creak of wood, like someone was walking slowly. My heart was pounding, and though part of me knew it was a bad idea, I decided to open the door and peek into the hallway. The light in the hallway was dim, barely illuminating a few meters, but I managed to see something at the end. A figure standing, motionless. It looked like a man, tall, thin. But what unsettled me the most was that, despite the distance, I could tell his clothes were torn, and his pale skin glowed faintly in the darkness, as if it were made of translucent material. I took a step back without taking my eyes off him, and as I did, the wooden floor creaked beneath my feet. The figure slowly turned its head toward me. It was such a slow movement that it felt like an eternity, and when its eyes, 2 empty black voids, locked onto mine, I froze in fear. Suddenly, the figure slowly raised its arm and pointed in my direction, never breaking its stare. Then, without making a sound, the figure began to advance toward me, sliding slowly, dragging its bare feet on the floor. It was like watching a nightmare come to life. I tried to move, but my legs were stiff, as if an invisible force kept me rooted to the spot. I felt that if I didn't do something quickly, that thing would catch me, and I didn't want to know what would happen next. I managed to take a step back, enter my room, and slam the door shut, locking it with the latch. My breathing was so rapid that I could barely hear anything other than my own heart pounding in my ears. I stood there trying to listen for any sounds from the hallway, but everything was silent, more silent than it should have been. Even the sound of the bell had stopped. A few minutes passed, and I dared to look through the small keyhole. The faint light in the hallway didn't show much. And then, slowly, the figure slid right up to the door, so close that I could feel its presence through the wood. I couldn't make out its face clearly, just a dark void that seemed to absorb all the light around it. And then I heard that whisper, a deep, distorted voice repeating something I couldn't understand, but it chilled me to the bone. I sat down on the bed, unsure of what to do, terrified that the figure might enter my room. I could feel its presence. Out of nowhere, loud knocks began on the wooden door. Whatever that thing was, it wanted to get in. I let out a scream, and then absolute silence. I peeked into the hallway again and saw nothing. No one. It had simply vanished. At dawn, without hesitation, I gathered my things and left the inn. I didn't want to stay another minute to find out if the bell would ring for a third night. Since then, every now and then, I think I hear a bell ringing in the distance, and that feeling of being watched returns. Some nights, when I close my eyes to sleep, I can see those black eyes watching me from the hallway, just like that night. Thank you for journeying with us through the dark passages of these stories. If you enjoyed them, give us a like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss more tales of terror. Until next time, where fear will once again be your companion.